Connellan, good to be back.
Yeah, number four. Number
I
four.
think so. I think it's number 4. I feel like for people who are listening to us today, you should go back and listen to. Oh, scared as I am for you to go back and listen to our early chat because I'm still a novice, but I was even more so a novice at the time.
You didn't have dyed hair back then, didn't you? That was just
I
post
think
dyed
just
hair.
thankfully just post if they're going
Yeah.
to go back and watch it. But you have an incredible story that's been told in many different mediums now. Shark attack survivor, which is wild. But we're not going to go back and talk about all that today. There's those past resources there for people to go back and listen to. But the one thing that, the many things, but one of the things that really I like and am inspired most about when I sit down and chat with you is I feel like you always have great practices to audit your life, reflect, and get the best out of your time.
That's good. I'm glad. I always feel like I'm kind of making it up as I go.
Well, they work. They resonate.
I'm a big believer in just doing stuff that makes sense to you. And I think a
Mm.
lot of the stuff I do makes sense to me. And if you think it makes sense for you as well, then maybe there's some merit to it.
Would you call it intuition?
Depends what intuition really is. Like,
Mm.
is intuition just based on this random feeling that you have in the back of your mind, or is intuition something that's based on maybe some feedback that you get, or like a result that you can then, I don't know, it's hard to say. I guess it is probably based on intuition. Maybe a lot of it's based on personal experience as well, but I don't know. I'm sure we've talked about it before, but I've always been a big believer that I'm not a very special person. I'm just someone who something at some stage in my life I had something very irregular happen to me, which I think a lot of people assume that you come out of it with all of these big life lessons and all of that, which is true as far as perspective goes in the broader picture of everything. But I don't know how much that translates to all the other stuff. Maybe there's some little bits and pieces that maybe shade it in one way or another, but I think the way that I approach things and the way that I think about things is fairly similar to, I hope, fairly similar to the way a lot of people do as well.
I've never asked you this, but I wonder, you don't strike me as a person who gets stuck in comparison. I feel like you, at least from my interpretation of the way that you live your life, you are very comfortable doing you.
Uh, look, I would say it's a lie if I said there was no comparison. I think as humans, we always, you're kind of looking around. I think,
Especially after you've been fucking attacked by a shark. I'd be looking around a lot, brother.
Unrelated to that, of course. Yeah, I'm not sure. Comparison for me is like, I think my view on comparison is very much tinted by the ways in which it has helped me in the past. Like I always talk about throughout my recovery, comparison being a big part of it in a positive way. But it was just learning how to use it for me. So for me, comparison was, and this is probably the comparison that you're talking about, it's not comparing yourself to anyone else. And for me, throughout my recovery, it wasn't comparing myself to who I was before, or even who I wanted to be for that matter. Like it's nice to be aspirational, but I think when you start doing all of that, it takes you away from what's present. And that's really, at the end of the day, we were just talking about things that you can control. You can only really control what's in the present. You can't necessarily change things that are going to happen in the future, except for the actions that you put in place right now in the present. You obviously can't change the past either. And for a large part, you can't change other people, or you shouldn't try to. But I always found from my recovery, and this was through a conversation I had with Owen Wright, that the only person you can compare yourself to is the person that you were yesterday, because then you can ask yourself, what's one thing that I can do today to be a little bit better than that person? So I'd like to think, I know that mindset helped me a lot through my recovery, and I'd like to think that is an approach that helps me in life a little bit today. And I think it's one that's centered just around constant improvement. It's around personal growth, and it's just around the fact that you kind of have a say in what that next step looks like. And maybe a lot of that comes down to self-ownership, and that's a step far removed from comparison in a way. So I don't know, again, I think comparison can be something that, depending on how you look at it, can be very different. It's a word that a lot of people shiver at now, because the whole comparison is the thief of joy side of things, which is a part of it. I just like to think that I've found a way to use it for me.
I think they call it upward social comparison, where you're using comparative measures to inspire you to change in a positive direction. I'm pretty sure it's upward social comparison. I think there's two. Had a psychologist on the show before explain it to me. But I wonder for you, Bretto, like if you think about your daily practices, or at least maybe not even magnifying the daily, but weekly, monthly, the things that you do consistently for you, how much of it is rooted in that desire to be better than you were yesterday, and how much is rooted in an effort to obtain some kind of peace in being present and just enjoying your life?
Well, it's funny, the idea of obtaining peace, I never really think about too much until I sit in front of a microphone and try and figure out how to communicate that to people. But it's not something that I'm ever really trying to chase specifically, or it's not a goal I'm trying to reach, if that makes sense. But I do think a lot of the, like you mentioned, practices that I have, for me, a lot of it is based on reflection. Because reflection can teach you so much about yourself, and not only that, but what you've done in the past and what you can learn from it. And also, I think it's just a great way to, as simple as it sounds, figure out what works well and what doesn't. Like that for me is one of the things where we can search so much for answers throughout all of this, but I think a lot of the times the answers are in our own experiences and our stories. I'm always a big believer in the fact that, and again, going back to why I think I'm just a regular person, I think everyone has amazing stories. I get so inspired listening to other people. And it happens all the time when I share my story, because, people come up and say, oh, it's amazing what you've been through. Like, I'm so inspired. I could never go through something like that. I'm like, well, I don't believe that. I don't think it's true. I think for a large part, like, a lot of people are far more capable than what they think. It's just they haven't been attacked by a shark yet. It's for lack of a better term there. Like, a lot of people are so capable. I would back so many people to be able to get through what I've been through, just because humans are incredible. Like, you've had your challenge and you've worked through them. You've spoken to so many people on this podcast who've had their own setbacks, that I'm not an outlier. Like, the hero overcoming the challenge is not something that doesn't happen very often. But I think for a lot of people, being able to view themselves as the character there, where they can say, hey, I actually have had these challenges, I've overcome them in the past, or I've been striving for this goal that felt difficult to reach and I actually got there. And when you have that proof and you're able to reflect on that and give yourself the confidence, that for me is where a lot of that, not only personal growth comes from, but also the ability to, maybe it is find that bit of inner peace, because you just realize how much more, like, the world's full of random things that can happen, how much more you are able to respond to all of those random things.
Yeah, it's almost it's funny I use the term to try and achieve peace. I guess peace is probably more about letting go than trying to grab a hold of something, like recognizing what you already have within you, within your capability. There's a quote that popped up on Instagram the other day. I've mentioned it a few times on the pod now, and for the life of me, I don't know the guy's full name, but his page was Leo's Fitness and Therapy or something like that. I don't think it was a very popular page, but this post had gone viral. And he said, if your peace depends on everything going to plan, then it's not peace, it's control. And I was like, isn't that a bloody mantra? Isn't that a bumper sticker to put on the car? Because I think that in many regards, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grab a hold of things that allow us to feel peace. And it seems like what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong here, is in recognizing what you've been able to overcome in the past, just be confident that when the time comes and you're called upon again, you'll be able to overcome whatever you need to overcome. It's within you.
Yeah, you've got the tools, I guess, is a big part of that. And if you don't, or if you don't feel like you do, then again, this might go back to comparison being a positive thing. Hearing those other stories or using other people as an example of how they've done it is a great way to know that it's possible. It all comes back to hope at the end of the day. And I think any way to get hope is good, especially when things are dark. Like, hope is really the only thing that you can cling on to at times. So yeah, I think that ability to just kind of look within and to know your own capabilities, it can take you pretty far. Like, again, I still look at what other people are doing, and you can be aspirational and maybe compare yourself to what they're able to do. And I've always kind of believed that there's a way to get there. It just kind of comes down to whether you want that or not at the end of the day.
So what are the practices at the moment that have become staples in your routine?
I mentioned reflection. That's a big thing. I try and, like, on a broad scale, I'll start sort of big and then and then work my way backwards. At the end of every year, or kind of at the start of every year, I'll say the start of every year because this kind of wraps back at the end. Start of every year, I'll look back at what I did previous 12 months. I've obviously got my goals that I try and aim towards throughout a year, figure out what I achieved, what I didn't, where there's room for improvement, and just identifying how you went about things. Again, what worked well, what didn't work well was, I think, is always a worthy practice, because you can find your strengths and you can find your weaknesses, but that's where you identify those areas for improvement. Or, I think this is a really important part, if you didn't achieve a goal and you ask yourself, why didn't I get there? And the answer is because I didn't put the time or the effort required in to achieve it, then the answer to if that goal matters is maybe not as much as what you thought when you set it. And it's totally okay to walk away from a goal as well. What might be important 12 months ago, a lot of things happen in that amount of time, may not be as important to you now. Things change, our environments change, the people that come and go in our lives change a lot. And I think the ability to look back on a larger scale and to reference your goals is really big. I start with the goals because that's what, for me, gives that direction, that purpose, and that movement forwards. There are certain points in the year where I'll kind of sit down and reflect and just be a little bit more proactive with asking yourself those questions, maybe not as in depth of as I would on a yearly basis. But I do come back at the end of every year, and I'm just about to do this now, where I'll look at all the things that I am really proud of doing in that year, and I'll actually reach out to the people who made that happen and thank them for that. Because I think one thing that we don't do enough when we achieve goals, we get in the habit of moving on to the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. We don't often take time to reflect and celebrate. And not only that, I'm a big believer in the fact that everything that I've achieved is not just solely on me. There's always the people behind you that make it possible, and showing appreciation is a big part of continued support and continued growth that I believe in. So that's kind of on the broader scale, the ability to set the goals, to work towards them through the year, to reflect at the end of it, to thank the people that helped you get there, and then to ask yourselves, like, what went well, what didn't go well. That's the broad structure and framework that anyone can do. Like, you can look at that as New Year's resolutions. You don't have to use the start and the end of a year to do that. It doesn't even have to be a year. You can do it quarterly, monthly, whatever it is. But I also have been a big believer in gratitude throughout my entire experience since the shark attack. Is something that I started doing throughout my recovery. And this might go back to, like I said, celebrating the achievements that you have and reaching out to those people. But this is where I break it down daily and make sure I do my gratitude every single day. Just write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. It might seem simple, but it's obviously a practice that a lot of people do when things are going bad. This is the thing, like, when it comes to gratitude, the ability to be consistent with it through, like, over a long period of time is the challenge there. Because what a lot of people do is you go through a rough patch, start doing your gratitude, you make your changes, you do these things that help get the ship back in the sea and start sailing again. But then when you're sailing again, everyone moves away from the things that got you there. Like, I speak to a lot of people when it comes to journaling or gratitude, and they're like, yeah, I was doing it for a while there, and then I stopped. And then I was like, well, what made you stop? And they said, well, things are going pretty well. And I'm like, and where are you now? And they're like, I probably need to start it again now. So you go through these peaks and troughs, and I think that's perfectly normal. But for me, having just that gratitude and the ability to write those 3 things, it's 3 for me, it doesn't have to be 3 for anyone, but to write those things down is part of the routine enough where I don't go through those ups and downs as much. I still do, but I think when it's consistent and you are implementing that reflection as, like, in part of your day, it does make it easier to not only have a catalog of, like, how things are going, if you want to do a weekly recap or a monthly recap, But it makes it easier to actually look back and to ask yourself honestly how things went. Because this is one of the things that I struggled with before I started doing gratitude is I always thought my memory was really bad because someone would ask like, what did you do yesterday? And I'd be like, I don't know. You kind of forget what you did. You're just going through the motions. Whereas gratitude for me has really helped me to sit down and be like, okay, what did I do yesterday? What are the things that, the little things that mattered to me? And that is a nice spark. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that I know all the research and the science behind why that makes you feel good. I'm just saying from my experience, it does make you feel good and it makes you smile when you can pick out those little things like a conversation that you had or spending time with the dog, taking the dog for the second walk, as you said. Those little things that make you smile. And I think if we can put ourselves in a position to smile more often than not, that is obviously going to be helpful overall.
I love it you said the little things. I think that's a really important clarification because when I've talked to just people in everyday life about the idea of gratitude or journaling before, I found that what people are trying to identify as these grand gestures or these moments that have like a huge weight or gravity to them, and they then can in turn become a little bit frustrated by the fact that their life has so few of them.
Yeah.
Whereas the little things, people say all the time, it is a cliche that it's the simple things that make life great. And it's a cliche for a reason because there's a lot of truth in that. It is the coffee with the person you love, the walk when the sun's rising, that ultimately they're little things, but they're also huge and wonderful things in what it means to have such a meaningful, fulfilling life that, I think we've got to be okay with there being a little bit of novelty.
Yeah. I mean, if we go through the practice now, if I was to get you to, because big picture are probably the first ones that come to your mind. Like if I was to get you to do 3 big picture things that you're grateful for, what would they be?
Oh, you mean today or
in general?
In general, marry the love of my life.
Yeah.
Have a dog that we love and adore who makes us feel amazing, and I get to do things that I love for a living.
Yeah, and it's funny. They're kind of like you've ticked 2 of the big 3 that a lot of people when I go through this exercise with them, they say it's always like my partner or family. It's doing what I do if they love their job, and it's often like where they live or having a roof over their head. So it's kind of like security, purpose, and people. Like they're the 3 things that a lot of people go to. And this is what so many people do when it comes to gratitude. If I say, let's write down 3 things you're grateful for, they'll write those three things down on the first day. And then if I got them to do it again the next day, they'd write the same 3 things, but just in a different order, and then do it again. So if we do break it down onto a smaller level and you look at yesterday or even this week, what is it now? It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday. So if you look at your week up until this point, what are 3 smaller things that you could outline? It might be harder to think about.
Bit of time in the sun.
Bit of time in the sun, yeah.
For sure, which I've been appreciating about this time of the year. Been getting in the water nearly every day. The ocean's been making me feel good. And just the cadence of being able to get out and go for a walk. I think incidentally, coming into the end of the year, despite probably a desire for it to still be a little bit busy on a work front to get some things done, it's getting quieter. And that lack of volume that is usually present has allowed me to slow down and just get out and go for a walk and relax a little bit more.
And what you find in those smaller things that you're grateful for, there's often like this is where the hidden clues are for when people are like, how can I, if I'm going through a rough time, how can I get things back on track? It's always in those small bits of gratitude. Like if you were having a bad week, how would you fix it? You'd go for a walk, you'd try and get in the sun, you'd go for a dip. Like there's so much value to reflection in those small moments that really matters to us, that I think is why I probably make a very big deal about it when it comes to what works for me, but it can be so simple. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. There's so many people that have these huge protocols, and I'm like, how do you have time for all of this? And again, if it works for someone, all for it. But sometimes simplicity is a great way to overcome all that friction and those hurdles that stop you from doing the things that you need to do.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a trend on social media that's been around for probably the last 2 or 3 months called my 5 to 9 before my 9 to 5. And it's interesting to see what makes up people's mornings or their evenings, right? But this idea that you have to pack in the ice bath, the 20K run, the half a book and, 13 social coffees before work is grossly unrealistic
Mm.
most days. And so, yeah, you're right. It's simplifying it and being okay with it being simple. I think is a real strength that
Oh,
you can take in your stride.
going back to the thing that you can do that makes you better than you were yesterday,
Mm.
it doesn't have to be all of the things that you can do. It's often
Mm.
just one. That's what makes progress, and that I think is, for a lot of the things, those little moments that make us feel like we've got a little bit more control over those random events that happen in life, or just help us manage our emotions and those sorts of things a little bit better.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I'll share a concept with you that's just come to mind. I'm going to coin it the pantry problem.
Okay.
I have this problem where if I go to Woolworths and I pick up a bunch of different goods for the week, I have to somewhat sample, try, or involve every one of those new exciting things in my food for the day.
Yeah.
So, if there's peanut butter there, I've got to have something with peanut butter in it. If I've got fresh apples in the fridge, well, I need to have an apple. If I've got yogurt, well, I'm going to have yogurt at some point. And you're kind of, by the end of the day, you're eating more than you need to eat
Yeah.
just because you want to try and taste and test all these things, as opposed to being okay with, I don't have to do all of those things today. The food will still be there for the week.
It doesn't. It's
Yeah.
not though. I grew up in like I my wife always jokes because whenever we have stuff like that in like chocolate or something like that, I'll always eat it really quickly, and she doesn't understand because her siblings are a lot older than her, so she kind of grew up without people to compete with. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I had two sisters, I had to try and fight for that food. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's where it comes from. But the
absolutely.
pantry problem is it's a good one.
Yeah, well, I feel like the pantry problem just applies to life, right?
Yeah.
Needing to do all of the self-improvement things within the 24 hours of today is, in most cases, grossly unrealistic. I always say that mums and dads have this superpower
Mm.
to just pick the most effective thing and get it done.
Yeah.
Because in and amongst the chaos of what it means to be a parent, they have this uncanny ability that is learnt to just go like, what is the top thing that I can do for me today if I get that time and get it done?
Mm.
And I'm always in awe of the parents who stay in really good shape, who stay, mentally balanced, who find time for them, because I think they have this ability to go, I don't have time for all of it, but what's the one effective thing? And I think that's a real superpower.
Yeah, I think so. And as again, it's probably something you do get overburdened with, having all the options that stops you from being able to do that.
Absolutely. So we talked about reflection in goal setting, gratitude. Is there anything else right now that is a staple?
As far as sort of personal progression and I guess self-regulating throughout the year, they'd be the main ones for me, because throughout that it helps me stay in touch with the other things that matter, which are relationships, friends, as much as you can, which gets more difficult when you get older. It's the physical exercise, like that stuff comes supplementary when I start realizing what matters. Like you start to prioritize that stuff a little bit more. So again, there's not always one specific answer to it. There's not always one specific model that I'll use. It's kind of just listening, getting the feedback, and then acting on that a little bit more.
I found it really valuable what you said earlier when you were talking about reflecting on the goals you set at the beginning of a year, at the end of a year. And I love that you mentioned sometimes if you haven't achieved a goal and you ask yourself the question, why not? And it's just because you don't value that goal anymore. It's okay to get rid of it. I wonder for you whether there's been any surprises, and I know you're just about to go in and do this exercise for yourself, bit of a self-audit in the coming weeks, but is there anything that comes to mind as a surprise, something you don't value as much as you did at the start of the year?
We were talking about this earlier, but the one that I would use as an example is, like, I had this plan, because my goals I often try and break down into what I can do physically to stay fit. Like, I know with my leg and with my body, it's going to have its limitations. I try and make the most of it, and having goals for me to do physically is a good way to stay motivated, to stay fit, and to stay strong. So that's one side of things. And then I also try and have like personal goals as far as what I want to be doing when it comes to family and all those sorts of things. But then I also have professional goals, and that's things like speaking, things like writing books. It's all of that sort of stuff. So the one that has stood out would be that physical goal. I just completed a 100-kilometer run down in Kosciuszko, which was always, like, this is the third one of those that I've done. And it's something that has always been a good driver for me to stay fit and stay healthy. I've loved trail running, and have come to meet and like be friendly with and know and respect a lot of people in that community that I've learned a lot from. And there's something about that community where it's always like you kind of finish a race and you're on to the next one, as we kind of mentioned before. And I had this plan just based on admiring and being inspired by people that have done it, that I wanted to work my way up to doing a miler, 100-mile run. And the 100K that I just finished was going to be kind of the step towards that. I was going to do that, and then late next year do the 100-mile. But actually was having this thought during my run, and like 70, 80 Ks into it, which might have something to do with why I was thinking this, but I was thinking to myself, am I enjoying this as much as what I set out to enjoy it? Because the reason I do it is for the physical challenge. Like I've always said, I want to get to that point where everything's telling you, no, I can't continue, and your brain gets you to continue. I've had a few moments like that where you kind of reach that limit and you push through, and it trust me, it feels amazing. It's one of those things where it just adds to that proof of your capabilities. And maybe I was at that same point where things are really difficult. I wasn't able to eat after 50 Ks, throwing up, feeling sick. Physically felt really good. It's just feeling very sick, and got to the point where I was asking myself, am I really enjoying this as much as what I set out to do? And I started forecasting forward to being like, do I want to go through this again when it comes to the 100-mile? Albeit when I'm at this point here, I'll probably be about halfway into the race. So there's a whole lot ahead of me. And I kind of made the decision there, well, not the decision, but I had this very strong feeling within me that I don't really need to prove myself in that sort of way. Like the 100 miles is just an arbitrary number that people kind of aim towards, and it's incredible when people can run it. But I think for me, I don't think there's any extra value that I can gain from running another 60 Ks on what I've already done. And I think the sacrifices that you've got to make in order to do it, whether it's time, whether it's energy, whether it's health. The strange thing about ultra running is, as healthy as you feel because you're running, it's not very healthy. Like eating sugar, and like there's something about it that doesn't make you feel as healthy as what you should. All of these things combined, I kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to commit to that 100-mile yet. And it was always part of the plan. Like I'd always penciled, I knew the race that I wanted to do, the Alpine Challenge down in Victoria. And at this stage, I'm saying to myself, it doesn't matter to me as much now as what it did when I first set that goal. And I'm okay with saying to myself, I'm not going to do that at this stage. There might be a point further down the track where I want to challenge myself again, and I will aim towards that. But I think often previous me probably would have been very tied up. Maybe it's ego in saying, I said I was going to do it, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to go ahead and put myself through that punishment, that pain to do it. And there's obviously a certain value that comes from going through that process, but I just think there's other things that I would rather focus on right now.
Yeah, it's a really fair point, isn't it? I wonder the influence of some incredible people on social media and their efforts to tackle these kind of endurance feats. I wonder how much of it has blindly pushed people into doing things they don't necessarily enjoy but feel as though they can get some kind of ego credit point for. And I know that's not that wasn't your goal to do this for any kind of recognition. In fact, I was looking at your Instagram the other day. You posted so little about it. I had to go to Strava to figure out, how you did. And you post very rarely on social media, so you're not that kind of person, right? But I think that there are, for a lot of us, like for me, as an example, I was looking ahead at next year going, how do I want to challenge myself physically? And the truth of the matter is, next year I just want to feel really healthy.
Yeah.
I just want to get back into a really good routine with looking after myself, lifting consistently, running a few times a week. I had a memory pop up the other day of what I would have called a regular Sunday 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, where I'd just gone and run 15K one morning out along the coast at Little Osty. And I remember the morning. I remember what I listened to. I remember what I drank after. I remember what I was wearing, why I went out to run in that area. And it was just pure enjoyment
Mm.
and love for going and clearing my head for an hour and a half in the fresh air, enjoying a run and a podcast. And I'm like, that's what I want next year. I just want to get back to really enjoying being physically active. And so I think that's just as valuable, right, as tackling some kind of major challenge.
Do you think you would not struggle, but do you think there's a difference in having that as we'll call it a goal, because it's it's kind of hard to measure, and then B, for as much as, like we just mentioned, the social media and all of that about it, for as much as I think people, and I fit in this group, for as much as I say I don't want to brag about these things, it is nice when you can share your accomplishments with people. Sure. And you realize who is either inspired by it or or is wowed by it. And I think that's as part of the reason why we do these things. What part of you having that goal do you think will be affected by, not having like a number to aim towards or a finish date, and then also finding it maybe harder to share with people?
Yeah, it's interesting because I haven't run a lot lately while I'm looking for some answers around my health. But in the months around going overseas to get married and then coming home for probably a month after I got home, I was running quite a bit. And when I say quite a bit, anywhere between 3 and 5 times a week. So just like good routine consistency. And most of those runs were anywhere between 5 and 6K. Every now and then I'd go to a 10 or go a little bit further. I only know they were 5 or 6K because I'd measured the track before. I can't remember the last time I put a watch on my wrist or measured how quickly I was running. I was just enjoying running. And I was enjoying what it was giving me mentally and physically as a feeling, as opposed to a metric. And I was actually questioning whether you could prepare for a race without measuring or tracking any of your training runs and just prepare off feel and strive for the goal of enjoying something through the finish line. And, I granted there is a lot of value in having metrics to measure progress, etc. I don't doubt that. And I've been aware of a whoop at times when I want to have some kind of awareness of health. But I wonder how much it also inhibits us from enjoying, but also leaning into the intuition of how we feel. One thing that I know for sure about running is it's very humbling. So, today's hubris can be tomorrow's humility when, by all measures, you should feel amazing on this run because you're fit.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, the lungs don't like it and the legs hate it even more. So running is very humbling in that manner. And I think that there's very good research, but also stats to suggest that progress isn't so linear in a sport like running, or kind of in a lot of areas of life. So sometimes just like letting go of the outcomes and doing it for the enjoyment of doing it or for the process and just trusting the process without needing to measure everything is something that I want to be a little bit more inclined towards in 2026. I set a big realization for me at the end of 2024, heading into this year, was I said, heading into 2025, I want to reward myself for effort as opposed to outcomes. And this year I've been frustrated with all the outcomes that I missed and, at times given myself very little credit for the amount of effort that I've put in, despite uncontrollables. The effort's been good.
Yeah.
I didn't really have any major running goals this year. I tell a lie, at the beginning of the year, we were training for a marathon. And Soph and I went out this one morning to run 30 Ks and we're both feeling pretty average. Similar to what you were saying, just the nutrition wasn't there. And this is just even a couple Ks into the run. I was trying to train my body to love and accept the nutrition. We got 4 Ks in and I was like, I feel awful. She's like, I feel awful. And I was like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Today's not the day. And we both evaluated at the end of it, like, what are we doing this for? We're doing this to tick off another marathon.
Yeah.
We're not doing it necessarily because we feel like we want to run a marathon or that that's a goal that we're going to get a lot of value from at this point. She's done one. I've done enough to know that they all feel pretty similar at the end.
Well, what's been your favorite marathon that you've run?
There's two answers to that question. Unfortunately, it'd be very romantic of me to say the one that we did together, but that was a shit day for me. So
Damn.
I'm gonna park that one to the side. The first one, because of how significant it felt, I feel that it was. I don't want to squander the significance of what it means to run 42 Ks, but since I completed my first at the end of 2020, there's a lot more people completing marathons. So maybe it feels like the significance of that has been a little bit watered down. But it's amazing because people are out having a crack, and I love that. But for me, it was super significant because of what I had to overcome to get there, and the recognition that this is a very lofty challenge, and I was able to complete it. So I got a lot from it. Then the other answer to that question is the Melbourne Marathon in 2022, because it's the first that I feel like I left the start line with an intention and maintained that intention throughout the course of the run through to the finish, where I, was able to go sub 4, which was my goal, where I didn't stop at any stage, where my health supported me enough to get through to the finish line, and I wasn't battling myself. That was a really significant run. Also, no headphones and no mates around me. I ran that solo, so there was a lot of self-recognition in getting through to the finish line that I felt really proud that I had to lean on me a bunch through the run, where my first 2 marathons were a very different experience, surrounded by great mates, family and support. And so those two for me been really significant. So I hit the ball back over the metaphorical fence. What would your answer be? Think less marathon and more endurance effort.
It's funny. I'm inclined to. There's something about the first difficult thing that you do, which is meaningful for me. That was the first 100K walk that I did for Oxfam, and I think it was just kind of like dipping your toes into that space and seeing what it was about. That's kind of what me got hooked on doing difficult things and trying to find out where that limit is. Like I clearly remember, like 2:30 a.m. half our team had dropped out. It was just me and Nick. It was freezing cold. We were down by the river. Nick closed his eyes to go to sleep for like 30 seconds. I was there eating like a peanut butter sandwich or something like that. And I was laughing because I was like, why are we doing this? And Nick snapped out of his sleep like 30 seconds later, fresh, ready to go. And we just started walking again. And there was something about that moment. I was like, okay, this is really cool to have like this weird delusional moment where like most of the times in my life, I probably would have given up, but you keep moving. That I think there's obviously significance in that. There's a massive amount of significance, I think, in Molokai to Oahu, just because it's so different. Again, maybe there's the idea for me in like the uncharted territory side of things where I don't know many people that have done it. I do now that I have done it, and I've met people that have done it. The
Certainly
spiritual,
more niche though.
way more niche. The spiritual energy that you get when you finish that is something that I have not experienced in anything else. It's like Hawaiians call it mana. Like it's just this connection with the ocean that I've never had. Nothing that I've done in the ocean with surfing or anything has come close to that. It's been my favorite experience in the ocean by far. And I think maybe that connection back to a place that has always mattered to me in the ocean is something that puts it up there on the list.
I think for context for people listening too, that was a paddle.
Yes. Yeah.
Not a run. You're not Jesus. You weren't running on water.
Well,
depends who you ask. Can I ask how much of the significance of that do you think is also due to the fact that it was a huge part of your film?
Possibly, but also the fact that I went over and did it outside of the event, it wasn't, and that wasn't just to get it done for the film, it was just because I wanted to go and do it. So I think like the common thread that I have here is along having something outside of just the activity itself that makes you want to do it. Like to do the first walk, it was to do something challenging for the first time. The Molokai was to do something outside of an event where it was truly just for me. But in all honesty, I think, and I'm not saying this just to pander, one of my favorite ones that I've done is the marathon with you. And this comes back to why we do things in the first place. To just, if I was to decide to go and do 100-mile next year, it would just be to tick off that distance. The marathon that I'd ran with you, walked, whatever you want to call it, was the first marathon that I'd completed. But there was something about knowing that I was doing it with people that it was significant for, like the community that you built around that event, the fundraising side of things. Like, I think all of that makes it matter more. Like, I just remember, again, getting to the finish line, and it's not like just crossing a finish line, you get your finisher's medal and that's it. Like, there was this, for me, and especially the hurdles that we encountered along the way, and getting you to the finish line, that was meaningful. Like, and you kind of summed it up perfectly when we have on stage before, the go on without me dramatics that you pulled when you were laying there on the ground, and no one was going to. And I think that speaks to being a part of something that's greater than what you're doing.
Shared experience.
Exactly.
It's pretty powerful, hey?
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the greatest achievements that I've had and that a lot of people will probably have in their life come from.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder for you, Bretto, like, I was mentioning to you before off camera, in reflection of the fact that we're going to be chatting today, it just made me want to go back and watch your film. And I wonder for you, have you sat down and watched it since it released and thought about the significance of attacking life and what it achieved and what it means?
I haven't watched it again since it was released. I maybe watched it like once after the premiere with family.
Is there a reason why?
Purely just due to the fact that like, when you finish something as significant as that, but then time passes, not only do your skills in creating something like that improve to the point where you find different ways to tell a story, things that could have been done better, but more of I've always felt like there's more of my story, my experience that I could have put in there. But and to me, that defeats the purpose of like why you release something in the first place. Yeah. And I've always said, I'm not going to do an Attacking Life 2. That would require, first of all, being attacked by a shark again, which I'm not going to do. But nothing that I want to do is going to be based around like sequels in a way. Like, I don't want to have to do something twice. I want to get to a point where I can finish sharing my story in whatever way that looks like and be proud of everything that I've done. So I think, there is probably a part of watching it again that would be useful, because I could figure what parts were left out and what parts I still feel need to be told and what parts might be useful to people. But just purely due to the fact that, there was once a point in my life where I said to myself, this is done. And now if I was to watch it again, I would say it's not done. And I just don't want to put myself through that. I feel like that's something that a lot of people who do creative work or anything like that would feel. I mean, I'm sure I've mentioned this on many podcasts before. It's one of my, just a great way to think about things. Someone like my friend Kane Horspool, he mentioned when I was interviewing him for like a website blog years and years and years ago. It was just like a fun little project that I was doing. He's an artist, and I was asking about some of his favorite artworks that he's finished, and he said, "I'll stop you there. No artwork is finished. It's only ever abandoned." And I think that, like, if we talk about attacking life, like, I think it just got to a point where we abandoned it and released it. So that for me is just kind of how I look at the project now. And if you tell it in a different time, it probably comes across differently. But these are all the what ifs, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned earlier when you spoke about goals, book. Are we allowed to talk about the book?
Yeah.
So you've been working on a book which is a mix between your personal experience, but also educating people on sharks and this relationship we have with the greatest predator in the ocean. Interesting time. There's been a lot of talk about sharks recently on the news. I actually wrote down some stats. So as of late November 2025, Australia has seen around 20 reported shark incidents, including 5 fatalities this year. A significant cluster of those on New South Wales mid-north coast. And I know that the New South Wales government has just committed $2.5 million worth of extra funding to shark drones for the detection of sharks, but also to bite kits on the beach. This narrative that's growing around more exposure than ever, how much of it do you think is more exposure or just more news exposure?
I'm going to make it sound like I'm old and I grew up in the 70s, but when I was younger, if I was surfing and I saw a shark in the water, I would tell the people that were out there surfing with me, so they would come into the beach, and I would maybe tell like the lifeguards that were on duty. I didn't have social media to post it to. Like, there was no way to get the word further out than that. But that's essentially the handful of people that would know about a shark sighting at that specific beach. It wouldn't go beyond a couple of people in the town. I think that exposure that you mentioned now is so easy to hear these stories, and it seems like sharks are, their populations are exploding, which is actually not true. They are decreasing. They have been for a very long time. I think it's the conversation around, sharks and what we should do to coexist is something that is obviously, it's got its two sides because, and it shouldn't, but it's one of the things that is driven by media and how they report things, because they have obviously got to always report things to have two sides. And I think to be pro-shark is often to be seen as being anti-human, which is also not true. It's just the way things are framed by media these days. There's a lot that we have to learn about sharks. There is a lot that we have to learn about shark mitigation strategies, and drones are definitely a step in the right direction as opposed to shark nets, because on top of that other news that you mentioned just before, like I'm sure everyone has also seen all the other stories of the whales and the other things that do get caught in nets, other sea life, dolphins, turtles, all these things which are byproducts of a technology that was brought about way too long ago to still be in use today. But it's something that makes people feel safe, despite the fact that it doesn't span headland to headland across every beach. It doesn't span surface of the water all the way to the bottom. The amount of sharks that get caught swimming back out through shark nets is a lot more than what people would like to hear. It's something like 48% or something like that.
Yeah.
So the issue of sharks is around the issue of how people talk about sharks. The hard thing that I've always found is when we unfortunately do have fatalities, the way that people go about that. It often lacks a lot of sensitivity towards the individuals and their families. I, without fail, will always get phone calls and messages from people who want to reach out and get my view on, a certain incident. And I, up until now, and will forever just decline those interviews because out of respect to the family and the individual, because I know what my family went through at the time of my attack. And that for me was always the worst part.
Yeah.
I think the media needs to have a lot more accountability in how they go about that side of things, because that's really difficult. And especially if you're contacting family members who are in a very emotional state, that fuels so much of, either side of the argument, whatever that looks like. But again, this is part of the reason why I was really interested in the idea of this book that I'm writing. I just said a lot of things that I believe to be true for me and my experience. And I think lived experience has a big part to be heard, and should be a big part in how we look at sharks. But just because that's my experience might not necessarily mean it's always correct. I've found myself to be in a position where I can say these things and they feel true to me, but there's probably a level or a threshold where I may change my view. And I don't know what that is, whether it's maybe losing a loved one, or coming really close to someone who's lost a family member, or losing a friend to a shark attack, where I might look at it differently. So the idea with the book is to intertwine my experience and speak to other people to get their views and their opinions on sharks, to essentially answer the question, if I, someone who's been attacked by a shark, can still love and respect these amazing creatures, then what's stopping other people? And again, that comes from me, but there's a rhetorical question to that, which is, what's stopping you from changing your view? And it is a question around how we converse, how we are presented facts, and how we're presented stories, and how we actually digest those to create our opinions as well. So these are all things that I'm really, I have been digesting as part of the book, in the interviews and the people that I'm speaking to. And I think it'll be a really interesting thought experiment, sort of to get to the end of it and to ask myself, has there been anyone that I've talked to, or have I encountered any points of view that have made me seriously consider or challenge my view on this at the moment?
One thing that I've been really interested in learning about since we've been mates, which is a couple of years now, is the Bite Club. This group of people, it's exactly as it sounds. This group of people who have been bitten by sharks that exist in this group. It is not some kind of deep, dark cult, but just a group of everyday
Sounds
people
like
who
it.
have had a crazy life experience and can connect on, these conversations. How many opinions, how do opinions tend to differ in the bike club around these ideas?
Yeah, they do, and it often it can relate a lot to like cultural background, maybe like what someone was doing when they were bitten or where they were. Like, there's a lot of factors that can come into that. Also, like how willing someone is to speak about their experiences and to be like to share their opinions and their views is also another thing that culturally has its thing. Like, I've spoken to a few members who are American, and they have been a lot more open with their own thoughts and views, both positive and negative. Whereas I think Australians generally have, in my experience, kept it more to themselves. But the bike club itself is just about that. It's about sharing those experiences to know that they're like, trauma is fickle. Like, there's so many, you can have people who go through the same experience and have completely different outcomes. You can have people who go through different experiences and have the same outcome. There's so few predictors as to how you can get people to get to a certain place. But I think, and I mentioned before, hope being such a big part of it, hearing people who've been through it, listening to different stories, how they've worked through it, that's where you get the hope from, and that's what the bike club has been really great for. And I think it's valuable that people do have different experiences, because you're not saying you have to feel this way about it. And again, that goes back to why I'm writing the book in the first place, is that's how I feel about it, but that's not to say that that's how everyone should feel about it.
Interesting question. I don't know whether you have any kind of answer for this, but are there any groups that exist parallel to the bike club for those who have experienced any kind of other animal attacks?
The bike club's very accepting. We have people who've been bitten by bears and different
really?
experiences as well. Yeah. We've got a few.
There you go. So bite being quite general.
Yes, it is. It is quite general, which has changed a lot. I was speaking to a guy who was attacked in like the 70s over in South Africa, and when he moved to Australia, he heard of these guys who had this club, and he reached out to them, and they're like, no, this is just for Australian people who've been bitten. And he was like, what's up with
Why
that?
is it so niche?
Yeah. And then he heard of the bike club years later, and he's like, no, I've talked to those guys before. They didn't want me a part of it. And then spoke to the guy who actually started it with the intentions of making it inclusive. And he's like, this is a much better way of doing it than having these rigid borders on like what constitutes where you've been bitten or what type of shark it was or anything like that.
What's the craziest story you've heard? The craziest animal encounter?
Probably bear. And that's just due to the fact that it's so uncommon for Australians. Like, I'm terrified of bears.
So this is an Australian person?
No, it's someone who's based in America or Canada. I can't exactly remember. But yeah, they're a part of the bike club because of the bear bite that they had.
Oh, it's so crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to be in that situation.
No.
Absolutely not. I heard a story the other day on a podcast that I think it was a child that was being attacked by a bear, and this group of people who were hiking, I think it was like a school group. There's one guy who's on a crutch who's beating the bear with a crutch. Another guy who's tried to crash tackle the bear. Like, it's crazy. The human spirit, the desire to survive and protect is unbelievable.
A lot of brave people there.
Oh, absolutely.
To be able to fight off a bear.
What's your relationship with surfing at the moment? I know that,
I can't wait to go back to it. With running, I haven't been able to do it as much as I'd like. I always kind of, it's somewhere where I always know I can come back to.
Yeah.
So it's time now to dedicate a bit more time to being in the water. I have been missing it a little bit.
Do you feel like is surfing one of those skills that when you put it down, you can pick it back up pretty easy? I know for me.
Are you asking for you or for me?
For me, it's not, but for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. The hardest thing if I don't surf for a while to come back to is timing. Like, I still know how to do everything and it's all there, but it's just how to time what you do on a wave with what the wave is presenting to you. So I can never go, like, if I was to go back and try and surf on a shortboard as good as I can now, I'd be way off where I was. But I can go have fun every time I get out there, and that's why I surf now. I'm not trying to compete. So I don't have to be surfing as much as what I did in the past in order to enjoy it. But I don't know, I think the wave plays as much of a role as what the surfer does. So even if you're not surfing that good, you can still go out and get a good wave. And that's my advice to you, to get back out there.
Yeah, I should. We've got 2 boards sitting in the garage that are just collecting
Have
dust
been
at the
for a long
moment.
time. You've been talking about it.
Absolutely. Maybe it's a pipe dream for me. Just the desire to want to be a surfer guy.
Bleach blonde tips,
Yeah.
surfboard in the garage.
Absolutely. Or just at least, strapped to the top of the car to make it look like
Yeah.
I play a part in
Sun's
sport.
yellowed by the sun.
Yeah. I wonder for you, Brett, have you ever heard of the law of least regret?
No.
I heard this really cool concept the other day that was the law of least regret. So it's whenever you are stuck on a decision, think about yourself in 5 years. Which choice would you regret not making? I wonder if there's something that comes to mind when I say that today.
So if there's something I would look back in 5 years' time and wish that I either did or didn't do something, or it has to be something you say, I wish I did.
Something you wish you did.
There's nothing I can think of like off the top of my head right now. And I think a big part of that is my willingness to try things and to actually follow what matters to me. It's one thing that we've spoken about before. When you realize how fragile life is, you never want to get to that point where, like, regret is so funny. Like forecasting forwards and saying, like, in 5 years, if you can judge whether if you do regret anything, is, in my opinion, incorrect, because I think the only time you can judge regret is at the end of your life. Because up until that point, you can always make amends.
Yeah. It's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I say, it's one of the big things that sticks out from the nearly dying part of my experience, is that ability to lay there on the beach and contemplate if this is the end, and to say, like, what has all of this been for? And the 2 things that really stuck out to me throughout that moment was I happy with what I did? Which, yeah, like I had, up until that point in my life, chased this dream that an 11-year-old version of me wanted to do, which was to become a professional surfer. Like I chased a life that was meaningful for me. So yeah, I did everything that mattered, but was I the type of person I could be proud of? Was probably no. And the reason for that is because of the life that I chose to live. It was at the expense of the relationships and the people that I cared about around me. And I'm grateful that I had that experience, because it has since allowed me to say, I want to be able to answer both of those questions with yes. I'm proud of what I did, and I'm proud of the person that I am when I get to the end. And I don't know if you've had the same thought process before through your experiences or not, but I do think regret is something to be feared far more than failure, if, like, for lack of anything else to compare it to. Because failure, you got time to amend it. Regret, by the time you are judging if you regret something or not, it's too late.
I love that train of thought, because I think they're often placed in 2 different camps. One being the overachiever, the ambitious side of you that wants to go out and achieve the big goal, slay the dragon that, has been deemed unslayable for someone in your position. And then the other part of you that wants to be okay with the simpler things that are equally as important, and wants to be proud of the way that you showed up with the values, etc. And often in achieving something that requires incredible ambition, it also requires a little bit of selfishness.
Yeah.
And so those things often get placed at 2 ends of the spectrum, and it's pick one or the other. But I don't necessarily believe that has to be the case. So I wonder, have you identified the skill or the way? Is it reflection? Is it presence that allows you to play in both camps?
It's bringing people with you for the ride. And that's where you can change your goals to the point where they don't always have to be so self-serving, but they are going to benefit someone else, or they are going to bring people along in a meaningful way where they both serve each other. That's why I spoke about the meaningful goal for me with all those physical challenges. What we did before with your run was meaningful because it was I got to run a marathon. Like, I got to get 42.2 Ks, and it was with a group of people who were all had this common purpose and getting, like, I don't think there's any goal that is more fulfilling than that. And I don't think there's anything that we could have done. Yeah, sure, we could run a better time, but I don't think there's anything more we could have done to have a great group of people that were there for the right reason.
No, it was awesome.
Otherwise, you would have had people continuing on without you. Like the Saving Private Ryan thing would have really come. It would have
been a lonely walk back.
Yeah, exactly. Sit on the back of the bike.
Oh, brother, we're coming to the end of our time, unfortunately. Is there anything that you want to leave with the audience?
I do. I want to see how quickly we can do this, but I want to share with you a meaningful way to set goals that I'm going to be doing this year. First of all, if I got you to ask yourself, what are the best goals that you can set in just the spirit that you set them, what would you say?
We definitely want to start the process of, go down the IVF route this year. So start a family. So we're very excited for that. That's a major goal for this year. I would love to go on another trip, to go and have another opportunity to explore, see another part of the world, to ultimately get on top of my health consistently again. I have to find a metric to measure that by, and just to have more, to connect with friends more this year.
There's kind of like this common theme in all of those goals, which is like, for you, I know for you, like marrying the love of your life, it's like you speak about it. You're like a giddy child when you speak about it, right? And all of those goals, like being able to go travel and do all these things that are fun, and to have, I guess that excitement in your life is a part of that. So I've found that children are much better at setting goals than adults because they don't think about all the stuff that comes around. I was speaking to school last week and I was asking, what are all your goals? And it was literally like, I want to study medicine. Like I want to be a professional football player. I want to do all these amazing things. And I was like, there's something to the childlike quality of setting goals that I want to lean into. So the way that I've done that is through something that I really enjoyed as a child. So what I've just thrown in front of you is a pack of Pokemon cards.
I like it.
And we're going to open that now and set some goals for you over the next week.
Okay.
So do you want to do this together or separate for now?
Let's do it together.
Okay. So that means we're only opening the one pack. So what you do, flip that pack over for a sec.
Yep.
Chuck us that yellow card and then put the card at the back on the front, if that makes sense. The other way around. Yeah, cool. So then flip those cards over and we'll go through one by one. So this is So what we're going to do is each type and rarity in these cards corresponds to a list of goals that I've got here. So toss that first one out because it's just an energy. What's the first card that you've got there?
Trapinch.
Trapinch. So that is a grass, I'm assuming. What's it got? The symbol up the top right.
The symbol up the top right is...
Or if you want to show it to me, I can tell you. Oh, sorry, top right. So that's fighting, and then they've got a little symbol down on the bottom left. So it's got a little circle, so you can see down there.
Okay.
So this one, fighting and a little circle. So that one is do something today that your future self will thank you for. This isn't the one that's going to set the goal. It's going to be the last 3 cards because they are the shiny ones that always look really nice. So if you want to tell me what the last 3 are, if you understand how that rarity thing works, and you can show them to me as well. So what's the first one that you've got there?
Charmeleon.
So that would be fire. And then what's the symbol? It is a diamond or a circle down the bottom left?
I think it's a circle.
Circle. So one of your goals this week is to give someone a genuine compliment or encouragement that you've been thinking about you haven't said.
I like that.
Okay, what's the next one?
Is Prinplup.
Prinplup. So water. And again, it's a
circle. Take
a short walk and call someone while you're at it.
I like it.
And then the last one?
Battle Cage.
Battle Cage. So this is a rare item card, which is really funny. So the trainer or item card is like the general thought is to do something good and share it. So this one here is to give help or uplift someone in a meaningful way this week. So
that's fun. I like that.
There's 3 goals for you there. And I said we're going to do it together. So I'm going to commit to the same goals as you. And we're going to come back in a week's time, and then we're going to see where we're at with those 3 things. So a fun way to set goals that not only just kind of give you something to do, but for a large part incorporate other people into the way in which you set and achieve your goals.
I think that's the resounding message of today. Bring other people in.
Yeah, as always. You can never do too much of that.
Brother, so much fun. Always fun to sit down with you.
Always.
Cheers.
Thank you.
That was great.